Welcome to the Design Dash podcast, your guide to designing a life you love. Join us as we explore the keys to living the life you want without compromise. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Design Dash podcast. I am your co-host, Melissa, and I'm here with my other co-host, Laura. And today we are here with Katie Decker Erickson. Thank you, Katie. We're so excited to have you. Katie started her company, ColorWorks, in 2007 to bring your knowledge of color theory to residential properties. And it sounds like your business just blossomed into a solopreneurship to now a full team. And you're focusing on, here I have my list in front of me, multifamily, commercial, medical, government, education projects with an emphasis on services. And you're doing full interior design plans, exterior design plans, paint color selection, art sourcing, and install, and photo renderings. So that is a lot. And your team works coast to coast. Which is much like what we do at Laura U, but we don't do all that. And you're also the founder of Success by Design, which is a coaching business and a podcast for interior designers. So all that sounds really familiar, Katie. So we're really excited to have you join us.
I'm excited to join you guys for the exact same reasons. And when you read that list, it's deeply humbling and deeply intimidating. Like, we need to specify that has taken almost 20 years. Like, that wasn't birthed overnight, or as my mother always says, Rome wasn't built in a day. Yeah, it's been a journey. No, I'm humbled to be here. And thank you so much for having me on the show. It's super fun to have the conversation.
Yeah. So let's start with that journey. It's been I guess since 2007. Like, tell us about that journey. Like, what was challenging? Like, what are you most proud of? How did you grow?
Fast. It was crazy, but it was also intentional, and it took a minute. And it all sounds very conflicting, but stick with me. So when I started in 2007, I spent about 3 years working in residential design. And I realized, y'all, I don't like residential design. And to the residential designers out there that are like, it's amazing. I'm like, I'm so glad there's people like you, because there's people like me who don't feel like it's amazing. And so I realized, because I have my MBA, I really enjoy the business side of design. And that's actually what led to Success by Design being birthed and mastering the business of interior design. But going back to where we were at inception, after about 3 years, I just thought, I just can't do residential anymore. And so I segued into commercial, and I fell in love with commercial. I love CapEx budgets. I love ROI. I love value add. All of those things make my heart so happy. And so I sat in that space. And if you're like, oh gosh, Katie, really? I'm like, I know. If you want to come out with me, I am your person. But we sat in that space for quite some time, because I didn't get married till I was almost 31. I didn't have my first kiddo till I was almost 35. I had a second at almost 38. And I wanted to enjoy each of those stages, because I didn't know if I was ever going to get those stages in life. I loved being a career woman. I wanted them, but those are things you can't just create for yourself, right? It takes two. So I intentionally held back on my business for quite some time. And our largest client came to us and said, gosh, Katie, please do interiors, because we were doing just exteriors. And I was like, it was during COVID. My youngest was about to go to kindergarten. We were coming out of COVID. And I went, oh, you hit me at a weak point. I knew this was okay, let's do it. And it was the best thing ever. I think because I'd been anticipating that day would come at some point, but I really wanted to wait till my kids were in school full time, and pretty much got that wish, which is pretty great. And I'm deeply thankful for it. Yeah, that was the year we grew 1,500% in 1 year, which was like drinking out of a fire hydrant. Sure. I think if I hadn't had about 10 years to plan for that, it would have been a lot. It still was a lot, but I feel like we were prepared at that point. And then fast forward, that was a lot of growth. And I had been teaching undergrad and graduate courses in business and designing them for a handful of universities. I love education, but I had to give that up to have that growth. And that's the whole thing. You can't have your cake and eat it too all the time, right? There's chapters in life. And so during that rapid growth, I stepped back from teaching and really ironed out, okay, what are our SOPs as a firm? Do we have the right people in the right seats on the bus? I really got it in order to function at this new level. And then I sat with myself for a minute and I'm like, I really miss teaching and I miss education. I just love being curious with other people. And I was like, what do we do? And I said to our operations manager, I was like, Jackie, what are we going to do? And she's like, why don't you coach? And I was like, oh. And then we're like, what would really help coaching is if we did a podcast. So we launched coaching and podcast, which I probably wouldn't do looking back at the same time. We would have done because they really are two businesses. But yeah, so we launched them both and it's been great. It's been about a year and a half of doing that. And I'm really grateful. It's been fun to get back into helping, especially because our industry is female dominated. Mm-hmm. I love helping other women succeed. It's a huge passion of mine. And so it's been super fun to come alongside these folks and help them push forward to the next level of what they want in their firm. So yeah, as you can tell, it's been a journey. It wasn't clear cut. And it definitely was about letting the business work for me rather than me working for it, which is one of the things I love to coach on, because I feel like a lot of times our businesses manage us. And that's just not how it's supposed to be, right? Like if we're at that point, that's like a recipe for burnout, disaster, and a dumpster fire. And so, right, emotionally, logistically, it just is not sustainable. And so figuring out how to kind of taper and scaling is great, but sometimes also reverse scaling to where your lifestyle's at, and just kind of walking that over the last, 17 years. It's been a journey. Yeah, it's been a definite journey, but I'm so happy to be here. I feel like I imagine you guys can relate, but I feel like we get paid to play. And I'm like, who gets to say that in their life? Like I'm having fun, a lot of fun.
We'd like to thank our good friends at Monogram Appliances. We've partnered with Monogram for over a decade with our design firm, Laura U Design Collective, and we're so happy to partner with them in producing the Design Dash podcast. Monogram sources the highest quality materials for their appliances, from commercial grade stainless steel to unscratchable sapphire glass. Monogram ensures lasting beauty and unmatchable quality for your luxury kitchen. And not only that, but they have an amazing team who we love working with, and we know you will too. So thanks, Monogram.
I love that. I think that's really encouraging to hear, especially for people that are maybe just starting out or have been doing this for a few years. And, we're in the residential interior design space. I opened my first storefront and studio in 2007. So we're very aligned as far as timing. And I had really fast growth up front too. So I'd love to hear from you. I have so many questions, but taking it back to the start, because I remember how hard that was and I had no idea what I was getting into. But I'd love to hear from you. And I guess talk to the people that are starting out and that may be nervous about it. Talk about how quick it went and then some of those things that hurdles you had to clear at the beginning.
For sure. It does. It can feel like you are drinking out of a fire hydrant. I'm sure you can relate to that. And it's, hang on to your hat because this is going to happen. I think one thing that I was very deliberate about is knowing when to say no and really transparent communication with your clients. So
that is really wise, really early on, I have to say. I've got to give you kudos for that. Because I was horrible at saying no. I said yes to everything and I burned out quick. So that's amazing.
It's a big thing, once again, with women. We're people pleasers. We want to meet everybody's needs. And you can't typically, at least until you have everything in place. You're just going to leave people disappointed, and probably most importantly yourself, because you really care about your clients and you're not going to be able to be there for them. Mm-hmm. And so I think saying no, if you have a backlog of clients, I always like to say, then you either have a pricing problem, right? Or you have a services problem, or you usually have a communication problem. There's usually something going on there if you have a backlog of clients. Mm-hmm. Raise your rates. Go after the platinum clients. You don't need to be hanging out with the silvers anymore. If you have a backlog, it's time for probably a rate increase. Also, lots of upfront communication. I will take your project. This is what we're going to charge. You will be waiting 6 months. Yep. The people who want to hang will hang. And the people that don't, then maybe they weren't that married to you anyway, and they'll find somebody else who's better for them.
They weren't your client anyway. They weren't your people.
That right there. Yep. They weren't your people. And that's totally fine.
I think I'm still learning this. About 17 years in, where are we? 2007 to 2024? Yeah. I'm still learning that, much to the dismay of my team.
No, it's a really, I think it's, and don't think I have this all mastered over here either. And let me tell you, it's a constant journey. We just had a client 2 weeks ago that we parted company with amicably. But I just said, like, what you want and what we can provide are two different things. They really wanted what I lovingly refer to as a Four Seasons design, but they wanted to have the Bud Light budget. And I was just like, we're not your people. If you're going to be concerned about your design fees at this point, when they've been clearly communicated, it's not that it was a surprise factor. If you're going to be concerned about that, you're not going to even be able to buy your furniture like that you wanted, that you specifically said, I want these brands. So those are hard conversations to have. And that, like, we wish you well, here are your files and good luck. And like, it's rare, but it happens, right?
Yeah. I think there's a graceful way to break up with a client that just isn't working. And that's how we approach it too. We're like, here's all the work we've done. You're not walking away with a loss. Like, here you go. Here's everything neatly packaged. Here's our recommendation.
Which I think is something that you're still dealing with, working more commercial and multifamily.
Yeah, that's a great question because we're residential 100%.
We're residential. So I feel like, man, we get that a lot.
Yeah, you do. No, it still happens on the commercial side. And I'll tell you who it happens with: smaller businesses, which is why we're getting out of the small business game and back to platinum clients again and not silver clients. We're getting into, like, this is why we work with a lot of REITs, a lot of third-party management companies, because they see it as a B2B relationship.
Oh, that's interesting.
When it gets really emotional, you probably see this in the residential side.
Yes.
Yeah.
I just can't do all the emotions and feelings. Like, I've got 2 kids. It's enough to manage their feelings and emotions. Like, I can't do it with clients. Like, I really can't.
Really thankless too. And I mean, I'm not being a designer, but handling things on the operations side. So of course I can be a little bit more unemotional, I think, because I'm not as tied to it. So then when I see some of these client concerns, I'm just like, who cares? Like, let's push through, like, we can get it going. And then the designers are like, no, Melissa, that is not how we should be dealing with this. And so I often struggle with that a little bit too, because I feel like residential is so thankless.
I think it is too. And people are so emotionally bonded to where they call home, right? Which is why I bowed out. Like, it was just like, I felt like logical decisions weren't being made. And that's really hard for my type A firstborn brain. Yeah. And so I was like, how do we, like, I feel like there was a lot of hand holding and emotional nurturing. And my bandwidth for that personally, and this is part of, like, know yourself and find your niche. Like, my bandwidth for that is very small. It's like, do we like the design? Do we not like the design? Why do we not like the design? Are we going to make budget? Are we going to make the deadline? Like, is the client going to get the ROI to return to the investors what they need to? Like, all of those things make sense to me. When someone's like, I don't know. I just don't know. Something just feels, and I'm like, oh gosh, I can't do this. And like, I immediately tap out. I'm just like, okay, be patient, Katie. And then I have to have, like, this internal dialogue with myself about it. Right. And I'm just like, that's when I bail, y'all. And I just, like, that's how come I'm so thankful that there are residential designers that do that, because it is just, it's a skill set. It's an incredible skill set. It's a skill set I teach, emotional intelligence, coincidentally, and communication, because I have had to do so much of it just in the first 3 years of my business. And then, of course, my undergraduate degree is actually in communications. But it's a thing. It is really hard to do. And I think it really becomes a labor of love. And kind of to y'all's point, you really have to connect with that client in a residential way, because you're in a very intimate space of their life.
So you guys are hating on residential. Obviously, I love it. And yes, a lot of it can be thankless, to Melissa's point, but there are those clients that make it all worthwhile because they are so happy and so grateful, and they are the right client because they trusted you. They didn't kick your ass the entire project.
Totally.
So it's like, it's those clients that I love. But yes, it is a lot of, like, emotion balancing, which with preteen, tween kids, girls.
Yeah. Yes.
Holy
Same.
moly. Like, we're doing that, and Melissa too. We're doing that all day, every day. So it's a lot. Yes. I want to ask too, God, okay, I could go down so many paths here, but the first thing I want to ask is, you have your team is 100% remote. Is that correct?
We are. We're 100% remote.
So talk to me about So we're hybrid at Laura U. So I'm in Aspen.
Nice. Yep.
Team's in Houston. I go back and forth. Melissa's in the studio right now, but we also we all work from home quite a bit. So we're in and out. So that happened in COVID because it let us do it. And we've been talking about doing it for years. And I think it's the best way to work.
I do too. My husband doesn't agree with me. He's like, you can't have a company culture and you can't have it. I'm like,
it is tough. It is hard though. So that's my question. Yeah. How do you inspire, not just manage? I feel like the operational part can be handled. It's how do you inspire and build your culture being remote?
Ooh, that's such a good question, Laura.
We're trying to figure that out.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's having a very clear cultural identity. I'm a very strong personality and I don't make a lot of apologies for that. Like sitting in the seat of my mid 40s, I'm very comfortable just to be who I am at this point. Yeah. And so a lot of people on our team, like we call it getting sucked up in the vortex, but we have a strong company culture and you get sucked up into our vortex of this is how we function. This is how we call them RCs, but are you caring? Do you have character? Do you have kindness? Even though that one's okay, but these are our core values. And so that's what we weigh everything against. Are you concise? Are you communicative? Because we weigh everything we do based on that. And it's interesting. People come into our culture and it goes one of two ways really quickly. We brought on somebody who we had vetted. We personality test. We have a conversation with them first with operations, then with me and our project manager. Mm-hmm. We do a lot of intense vetting. So we took this person through this whole process. And 2 weeks ago, she came on board and in 1 week she quit. And I was like, thank you. Just thank you for knowing right out of the gate. Don't get me wrong. Deeply disappointed that we spent all this energy, time, money, and resources on you.
But it could have been worse. She could have stayed for a year.
Right. And done a half-assed job the whole time. Right? That's not what we want either.
And created friction within this culture that you value.
Totally well said. Extremely well said. And so it just goes one of two ways. Either you get on board at ColorWorks and you're like, I see this. I get this. This is how I like to do business. And I'm finally in a place that works with who I am as a person, which is why we do personality testing, especially for specific positions.
Oh, Melissa's going to grab that one.
Oh, it's so fun.
I'm not doing a personality test for hiring.
And yet we don't do it at hiring, but we do it after.
Oh, you do it after. That's interesting. I shouldn't say personality testing. We do an aptitude skill set test. It's run by Gallup and it's called Clifton Strengths. And what I love is it's not
Strengths. Yeah. Okay. Strengths Finder also a little bit different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a little different. It's more like, what is your aptitude? What is your work style? It's like your work personality, I should say. Do you have high woo? One of them is woo and it's based on 47 characteristics, but do you really just love to woo people and get along with them and connect. And
I was like, what is woo?
Woo. Yeah, it's a thing, right? I know. Yeah. I'm probably more like Laura where I'm like, woo. Are you on board or you're not on board? We don't have high level woo, right? But
when we have to.
Yes, when we have to, right? And then there's things how do you do with project management? How's your communication? Is empathy something where you're just I feel you. Let's talk about that. That's perfect for a project manager, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really neat. It profiles what are your top 5, that you're strong. I don't want to say the others are weak. It's just more what comes naturally to you.
Yes.
And so that's super helpful. But having a culture that's strong enough and having systems in place that are good enough that people either kind of get on board or they go, oh, I didn't sign up for all that. I don't want to do that. And I want to say, thank you. Just thank you for being honest and transparent and saying that just isn't a good fit for me. Outstanding.
Fine.
Go find your happy place. If we're not it, I don't want to force a round peg in a square hole. Cause to Laura's point, they're going to be miserable and make everybody around them miserable. Right.
Yeah.
And good for them too. They're going to find something that's a better fit for them. Yeah. And I appreciate the people who have the self-awareness and the confidence to say that very early on, hey, you know what? I tried this out too, and it's not for me.
Yeah. I mean, have you guys found that? What has been your experience in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, we've run the gamut. I mean, there have been people I think who have stayed too long, or people who
Sure.
have maybe changed stream afterwards, like, oh, okay, so maybe they're not that way. And, you know, some people
Yeah.
I think who have kind of self-selected out immediately. But also,
Yeah.
too, you know, and I mean, this is a good question for you as well, but being in the business for this long, it's dynamic, right? And your business has changed. And while I think like our core and personal values are still, you know, fairly stable, I think that
Sure.
something can change in a business, or, you know, like our needs change, like the market changes and things like that.
Mhm.
And so we have seen some people who aren't able to adapt as we have adapted, I guess I should say.
Totally. You've outgrown
And
them.
And that's
yeah,
okay
they've
too.
outgrown us. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Laura, it is okay. I sometimes, and I think like sometimes in life, especially, I know I say this a lot, but especially as women, we think that like, oh my gosh, this is going good. If it stops going good, there's something wrong with me, or there's something wrong. And that's such a great thing that I love coaching too, is there are chapters. There are seasons in
Yeah.
nature and there are chapters in life. And we have had this on our team where we have had people come in, especially when we were bitty business and through that 1500% growth year, who stabilized and really did well and rocked it hard. And
Mm-hmm.
then we started making tweaks after that. And it was like, oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I don't know. And I was like, you know what? We've just outgrown what this person is able to offer us. And that's like a really hard conversation to have, right? Like, but they love to scale businesses from 5 figures to 6 figures. Well, now we're going to
Right.
7.
Right.
That's a different model, right? And so they're hard conversations to have, but they're also deeply valuable, because the reality is, and this is a hard one, that if you're feeling it as the business owner, undoubtedly they're feeling it working for you.
Of
And
course.
they're probably going to be greatly relieved, even if they're frustrated, annoyed, and even hurt in the moment, barring, of course, that you said it lovely and nicely and all of that good stuff.
Right.
But like, it's still hurtful, right? Like, because when something, we don't like change, we don't instigate. So you're closing a chapter for them that they may not be ready to close yet. But I think if they're deeply honest with themselves and sit with that for a few minutes, they're like, yeah, this is actually for the best, because I need to
Mm-hmm.
do X, Y, or Z in my
Yeah.
personal life, in my business life, whatever it may be. But yeah, that's hard. Those are
It's
hard
a relief.
conversations.
It's a relief for both people, because I've been on both sides of that, right? Where I'm
Honest.
talking to
Yep.
somebody that way, or like I have been on the outskirts of a company culture, you know, within a 6-month period. And I knew that it didn't work. But at that time, I was so early on in my career, I didn't have the confidence to say, hey, this isn't working. I was
Yes.
doing the forcing. And so when they let me go, I wasn't even mad. I was so relieved. I mean, I just remember calling my husband afterwards, and he was like, oh, okay, well, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And he's like, actually looking forward to this. Thanks.
yes, it's like, okay, now like they did the hard work for me, you know, and now this
Yeah.
was years and years ago, and so it would be totally different. But I think being able to see it from both sides, like I don't have a negative attachment to it at all. Like
That's awesome.
there's so many other places where we can work. Like there's so much
Yes.
competition and collaboration and so many other opportunities to find something that you actually love on either side
Right.
of the
And
coin.
maybe it's the same thing at a different company, and you just
Yeah.
need a different company culture, right? Or maybe it's staying in the industry and switching up your jobs. Maybe you're like, I don't like designing, but like, why is the project manager managing this project? If you're saying that to yourself, maybe you're a project manager, right? Like having those internal conversations, and like I always say, sitting in the seat of your intuition, like sit in the seat of your intuition for a minute. And don't be afraid of it. Let it talk to you, because you're going to get to where you need to be a lot quicker than fighting it and having to have other people put up the bumper cars of like, no, this isn't a good fit. No, this isn't a good fit. No, this isn't a good fit. Like you probably know what is your right fit, but having the courage to sit with that can be hard, but it can also be the most deeply valuable work you do, because you will get to where you're supposed to be so much quicker, which usually leads to a much happier person and happier outcomes.
For sure.
Right?
So you said sit with your intuition. So I have a question about intuition, and it has nothing to do with hiring or like
Let's
culture.
do it. Yeah.
Okay. So tell me about color theory. So
Oh, yeah.
I am a residential interior designer. I've studied art. I've studied architecture. I've practiced interiors for 20 years.
Yeah.
I feel like color for me is extremely intuitive. So talk to me about intentional use of color, or how do you do it? Like, how do you approach color theory?
Great question. And it really was the starting point for my business. I was actually flipping houses at the time. And I was so frustrated because I felt like I had to have a whole interior designer, which I didn't want to do because I felt like I kind of had that figured out, to your point about intuition. And I was like, I just need help with color. Why is there no one who just does color? And so that's kind of where it got started. I was like, I'm just frustrated. So I'm going to go figure this out myself.
I'm going to do the color.
Right. I'm going to do the color. I'm going to figure out how to do the color. And that's when I found the International Association of Color Consultants, which is like the mothership of color, and went and got certified through them and thought, I'm going to crack this, because it wasn't intuitive for me. I love it when there's people it's really intuitive for, like you, Laura, that you're just like, what are we doing out here? Because
I mean, at least I feel like I am, but like, who knows? I just do what I like.
Right? I do what feels right. Yeah, that's an intuitive thing. But there's actual science, which is probably why I love color, because it's a right and left brain thing for me. And I have found for me, when I can do both, that's when I'm happy. I can't just be all creative. I need some substance. I can't be all substance, because then on my creative side, it's like, what's going on over here? But with color theory, there's both. And so like, we know if we paint a wall red, we know your blood pressure is going to go up. We know your heart rate's going to go up. We know that's going to drive your appetite up. This is why restaurants paint their walls red. They want you to eat more. They know what they're doing, right? We also know that if we painted blue, and this is why maybe you remember back in the day, Sheriff Joe Arpaio down in Arizona, who had all the inmates wear pink, regardless, because it was a sedating color that calmed everybody down, which in a prison, ideally you want that. Well, he wasn't running prisons, he ran jails, but you want that, right? And so when we start seeing that there's actual physiological changes that happen with color, that's when I started going, okay, where are we designing spaces? Like, painting a nursery yellow is the worst idea if you ever want a kid to sleep. Yellow we know is an energetic color. It drives creativity. It drives, and like, you're going to put a kid in there and be like, no, that is not going to happen for you, right? And so the further I went down the road, the more I realized these undertones, the way that we're reading this color and the feelings people have with it are very real. And how most people interpret color, and this is where I do get some of those feelings, even on the commercial side, they'll just say something feels off with it. And I can usually go, yeah, all right, you lean more warm tone, or you lean more cool tone. And yeah, I bet once we change that undertone for you, you're going to be just fine. But it was something to figure out. And there is so much psychology around color. And I think what's the most fascinating thing, like that's where my color theory started. But then like kind of cracking this nut of ontological design. And ontological design is a whole idea that we don't just design spaces, but spaces design us back, right? There's this feedback loop that's happening all the time, which is why when you take people that are struggling, right, and we put them in an elevated space, people usually elevate to the space that they're in, because the space is designing them back and demanding the behaviors that are at that level, which is pretty fascinating too. And so that's kind of how color theory, at least for me, is even evolving into how do we want to use these spaces, which is a huge ethical thing, to design the people that come into them. Because they will walk out with new thoughts and new ideas based on the experience they have in that space. And that's exciting to me.
I am so going to go get color theory certified right now. Like, I love all of this. Listen to that. Add that on there.
Do. I will send you a link, because this is the place to go to get certified in it. It is fascinating and it is beautiful. And I think too, like, don't get me wrong, textures and all these other things we talk about in design are really important. But when we step back and we look at what is the single largest facet of design, it's color. It's on everything. But then you look at walls and ceilings, like you paint a ceiling black. Why does that feel so gross to us, right? Like black ceilings are oppressive. It's because we're designed in coordination with nature. And if you look in nature, clouds are not black, dirt is. So our brain, when we stand in a black ceiling, is like, this is upside down. This feels off. I don't like this feeling. Yeah, because dirt's black and we migrate through colors and end up at white in the clouds, right? Why are all ceilings white? It feels natural to us. That's like part of who we are as human beings.
My ceilings aren't all white, most of them.
Yeah.
But I don't think I would ever paint a ceiling black.
Right.
Unless I'm color washing a whole room.
Totally agree. 100% agree. And that would be really cool. But then you're not highlighting just the black pressing down.
No, you're making my skin crawl just talking about that scenario.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
It's
don't
a
feel good about
visceral,
it.
yeah, it's a visceral reaction. And I
Yes,
think
it really is.
that's what's exciting about color to me. That's why I love color theory. That's why I started there. And then I got sucked into the vortex again of all the other things design. But yeah, it's a very real feeling. Or you ever see that color and you're just like, oh my gosh, what were they thinking? And you
I mean,
literally feel
tons.
nauseous. Yeah. Right. Like, what were
Yeah.
we doing? It's interesting. There's a very tangible interplay. It's not just your perception, it's a physiological response. And that's what I love about it.
Hmm. I mean, Melissa, I could keep going here. Do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I
Jump in,
can't really
Melissa.
jump in on any of the color theory stuff. I don't think I feel that viscerally, or I don't have that kind of synesthesia with black. I was just like, man, a black ceiling could be cool if it were really lacquered and maybe the
Oh God, not with the rest of the room. Not, no,
This is why you're the yin to each other's yang. This is great. This is
no. Like my stomach hurts thinking about it.
right. Yeah.
I seriously have, like, I don't have a lot of feelings about a lot of things, but I have a feeling about that.
See, you're right for color theory. You're so right for color theory. Oh, that's great.
Okay, then
I love it.
Okay, I have another question.
Good. I am here for the conversation.
So you're a creative, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
Are you still designing actively? How much of your time is split between managing a business, growing a business, managing a team, and actually creative work for projects and clients?
Yeah, full transparency. And anyone who says they can do it all is lying, and we probably can't be friends. Oh, I have a wonderful team, and I lean on my team heavily, and I deeply value and treasure every single one of them, and they know it. I really hope they know it. If you're listening to this and you don't know it, come talk to me. If I would be lying if I said to you, I'm still sourcing. I'm not sourcing. Yeah. We have a wonderful sourcer. I'm looking at the overall design package before it goes to the client and saying, especially because we do commercial, are we meeting code requirements? Do we have ADA? Yeah. Is this the aesthetic we talked to the client about on the intake call, which I do still do and have a strong interface with the client still directly. But no, I mean, as far as actively designing, it's actually a pretty small percentage of my time, to be pretty frank with you. And there's times I really miss it.
But then you start doing, and you're like, why am I doing this right now? Someone else is better equipped to do this. And then you're high level.
It's so true. And then I'm like, and sometimes I'll wait in that pond and I'll just have the talk with myself. Like, Katie, I know that's cute. That's fine. Get in your own lane. You have people that are better equipped, better educated, more up to date on the vendors. They went to High Point. They were just in Vegas. Leave it alone. And walk away and let them do the job that you hired them to do. And so that's when I find myself usually going out and picking up some sidewalk chalk and playing with my kids, or we'll sit down and color, or I'll find a different outlet because we have the systems and processes in place to do what they're meant to do. And when they're doing them, it's because I'm staying out of it. And that's hard. Like you want to micromanage, right? But nobody wants to be micromanaged. So I don't know. It's hard. How do you feel about that, Laura? Like, I mean, something?
I'm exactly the same, but I will say we've had turnover recently. We're building our team back up right now and it's going really well. But in the interim, I'm sourcing. And let me just tell you, I have not sourced in a really damn long time. And it is like starting over.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I mean, I know the aesthetic of certain vendors, but I don't know their catalogs anymore. It has been so long since I've piece by piece to see what's in there. It's starting over. So no, I'm right there with you. I'd structure it the same way.
I'm not going to lie.
How do you guys deal with like relinquishing that control? Because I feel like as a designer, like you want to control that design. Like, was that something like immediately you were just like, I'm growing my business, I'm not controlling this anymore, and I'm fine with it, or was that hard?
You go first, Laura. I want to hear what
I mean, I don't feel like I relinquished total control because I don't even know how to say this. I still see high level what's going on. I still meet with the client up front, so I know what they're looking for. Yep. And then I see the design progress. And I, like you, Katie, I go back and I'm like, okay, what was in those initial meetings? What words did that client use? Does the design still reflect the design intent from the beginning? Yeah. But doing like the actual, just every single thing, the details, I don't need to do that. And I'd rather empower a designer who freaking loves this and wants to do it. I'd so much rather empower them to do it because I don't know. I feel good about it and they love it.
That's so well said. That's so well said. So well said.
Yeah.
I think that I always say, and I truly mean, I hire people that are smarter and more capable than me. And I am so proud of that. Like, they are going to go out there and do it better than I can do it. Yeah. I love outsourcing. My husband often jokes with me. He's like, would you outsource me if you could? I'm like, no, I love you.
But I'm like, totally, yes.
Right? I mean, we just had this yard project and I was like, of course we're going to outsource. And he's like, no, I think I want to do it myself. I want the satisfaction. And I'm like, I'm moving how many wheelbarrows of dirt and transplanting how many shrubs? Like, you want to do that? He's like, yeah, I kind of do. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Like, there is someone out there that has a mini backhoe and a whole team behind them, and they'll be in and out of here in a day, and they will whip that backyard into shape. And like, literally, my brain doesn't comprehend. He was so happy to dig out no less than 13 laurel trees with I don't even know what the tool's called. It was something that looked like you would use in like a murder crime scene. And he was so happy to do it. And he's like, that's amazing. I totally crushed those 13 shrubs. And I'm like, awesome. I don't know. Like, does that make you happy?
You know what? If it makes him happy.
Totally. But I just don't relate. Like, to me, that just isn't it. And so
that is not efficient.
That's the thing. It's about efficiency to me, and it's about my time. And this is something else sitting in my mid 40s. Y'all, we're at the halfway point on a good day. Right? Like, if I make it to 90, we're going to call that a winter chicken dinner. Like, I really think about that. And especially with my kids, my nephew just went off to college, our first nephew in the family, our first, next generation went to college this year. And I realize how much time I have left with my kids. And if I can buy back my time, who do I make the check payable to? Yeah. Where do I swipe? Because I want that time back, because it is sacred. And it is so valuable. And I think I read a very startling statistic the other day. 92% of the time you get with your kids parenting happens before they leave for college. 92.
Yeah.
And so I realized the clock's a ticking on my 92%. And so if I can go spend time with my kiddos and we can have those hard conversations about careers and spouses and what do you look for and girl drama and all of that, I'm going to pull up a seat to that. I'm going to pull up a seat to my business and everything else, y'all. There's a team that I stand on personally and professionally that gives me my time back. Yeah. Because you can't do it all, right?
No, you can't.
I mean, what do you like to outsource, Laura? Like, what is or Melissa too? I mean, what do you guys find gives you your time back so you can make the higher level decisions and run the things that need to be run at the level they need to be?
Melissa, I'd love for you to answer this because you're really good at, or at least trying to balance your free time and your work life. Like, I'm not as good at that.
Yeah, I put a stop to work at certain times and just won't look at it. Because I'm spending time with my family. You're right. I read that statistic too, Katie, and that hurts. And then I also, I think I read it in another article where they said the only thing that you can do that really gives you time back, especially, because we're in our 40s, is exercise. So like, instead of like making it about weight loss and looking 20 and all of that stuff, it was just like, no, if I can exercise, I get an extra year with my kids,
Ooh, that's good.
So I think about those kinds of things. But in terms of outsourcing, I mean, I love my husband and he looks so sexy outside when he's gardening, but I do wish that we would outsource that so he could spend a little
Thank you. Yes, that.
Like, I know you're capable. I got that. Just spend time with me, take your shirt off and be with me, not with the plants, that kind of thing.
They are not watching what's going on. I assure you.
But outsource, I mean, just like very simple things, like obviously cleaning the house, like that's, just to get my time back. Instacart, so I don't have to go to the grocery store. Yep. I still cook almost every single meal though, because I enjoy that. But although my husband brought tacos home yesterday, so that wasn't happening. I rent the runway, so I don't shop for clothes, like those kinds of little time saving things I'll do. And then, yes, I have a really great team here at Laura U. I have 5 really, I'm looking at them right now. I have 5 really awesome people that like, if I told them that I needed help with something or, needed to delegate something out, like they're on it and we work through it and get it. So if I didn't have them, I don't know, I'd be outsourcing a lot, but since they're all here and in-house.
Well, and what you said that I thought was so valuable is you have your own systems in your personal life.
Yeah.
And if you do not have systems in your personal and professional life, it's going to fail because systems work when people don't. And whether that's sickness, vacation, bad emotional days, systems are everything. So Instacart's a system. Rent the Runway is a system. My Walmart grocery delivery is a system. I actually had a mom on a soccer team the other day say to me, why do you do grocery delivery? And I was like, why wouldn't I do
Because it's
grocery delivery?
amazing.
And she's like, I enjoy grocery shopping. I'm like, okay, if that's your
Good
happy
for
place,
you.
I
I just see
that.
for me it's so
Why?
inefficient. It's not my favorite
Yes,
thing, and yeah, it's all about
agreed.
efficiency for me. Just list, boom. But you mentioning soccer groups, that's another thing I outsource. We have a great, like, really strong mom group. That carpool is a lifesaver.
Yep. I am with you 100%. I mean, that's how come if I can systemize it, I will. My husband's like, how many vacuums do we own? I'm like, 4. I have a Roomba upstairs that runs. I have a Roomba downstairs that runs. Then I have the professional one that the cleaning crew uses when they do the house. And then I have one in the garage for the cars. And you know what? There's a system. And I'm so happy, right? And it works. And those things like my happy place, I love you that we can all geek out on this together. My happy place is when both Roombas are running, my dishwasher is going, and my washing machine or dryer is burning through electricity. Because then I feel the house is working as hard for me as I am working in it. And that makes me happy. Like if I walk out the door and all that's going, I'm like, I have totally crushed today. Like,
just wait until you have a robot. You're going to be loving life.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that happened last week. Not that I bought a robot, but we went to a restaurant, which we're 2 hours east of Seattle, y'all. And we're kind of out in the middle of nowhere. They had a Play-Doh, the Play-Doh waiter. Have you guys gone to the restaurant? Oh, you should Google this. So Play-Doh is a waiter, a robot waiter that has shelves. And it was ironically at a cafe tucked into an antique shop. So I felt like I had Tourette's the whole time because I'm like antique robot. It was like being stuck in a time warp by 100 years.
Those two things are really hard to reconcile. Okay.
Yes, it created a lot of emotional angst. I'm not going to lie as a designer because aesthetically I was feeling so overstimulated by 100 years of inputs. But this robot delivered our lunch. The kids thought it was magical. But then what was so cool is the robot would then go over to a table that needed to be cleaned and it would flash and let the staff know this table needs to be cleaned. Come put the plates in my bucket. And then it would motor itself into the kitchen. And I just, it's funny you should say that, Laura, because the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, how do I get my hands on one of these?
Yeah, we need a robot.
I need a Play-Doh.
Like at the United Club, there's like a little guy. It's like a little mobile thing that just rolls around and then it stops and it flashes and it's like ready to bus or like put your stuff here. But I'm like, okay. Yeah, no, I need like a fully walking, talking, mechanical robot.
Yes. When they find the one that puts kids to bed and picks up socks off the floor. What is it? I threaten to burn socks on the floor all the time. I'm like, just Mary Maids? Is Mary Maids coming? I don't know. I haven't seen Mary Maids.
My husband threatens to put one of my girls she loves to bake. And
fun.
She bakes. She's getting so good at it. It's amazing, like from scratch. But she's terrible at cleaning. She leaves it really gross. And so my husband's like, the next time you leave this stuff in this kitchen, it's going to be in your bed. Ooh, I will take everything from this kitchen and put it into your bed. Not that serves anyone. However, I feel like it's enough of a threat that she'll.
Yeah.
Y'all, we got to wrap this up. So we can keep talking forever, but a couple just rapid fire questions. So what are you reading right now that you think our listeners may want to know about or in the recent past? What have you read?
Yes. The one that I'm reading right now, and I want to make sure I get the name of it right. It's about women in Vietnam. And I want to Women in Hell. It's like that idea.
I think everybody in our studio right now is reading The Womener, has just finished it.
It is so good. It is so good. Yeah. The Women by Kristen Hanna. Incredible. It's so deep. It's so profound. It's about the struggle for women and equality. Just, I feel like in general, and it's amazing to me that was even going on in the 70s. I feel like we're still fighting for it today in many ways. A riveting story of love, loss, triumph, conquest, emotion. Yes, I absolutely love it. The other one that I just finished was Aesthetic Intelligence by Pauline Brown. She was at Louis Vuitton for years. It's how she built in the idea of an elevated aesthetic beyond function. Like we'll pay up to a certain point if something's functional, but then why do we pay for luxury? And how
interesting.
Great book.
Okay, Melissa, you read the first one. I'll read the second one and we'll compare notes.
Okay.
Do it.
Sorry, I might a client call coming in. Let's just decline.
Decline. We'll deal with that later.
Just a minute. Okay. Last question before I go back and all of us go back into work mode. Last question on our coffee break here. Where's your travel taking you next? What's on the list?
Oh, I'm a travel junkie and my kids are now almost 8 and 10. So we can go. We're not like at full blown hormones.
Well, that's such a fun age. Yes.
Yes. Everybody still has control of their bodily functions. So we're making the most of it. Right.
Well, so they can haul their own luggage. It's amazing.
Yes, those wheelables. That was like a total moment for me when that happened. I was just going to sit in the airport and cry and be like, I'm not hauling anybody's crap anymore. I'm a real person. So real. It's so real. So actually, my husband's sister's having her first baby. So we'll be in Jackson Hole for their Thanksgiving. And then we'll be in Kauai for Christmas and then back in Scottsdale where I lived for 10 years in February. So those are kind of some of the big ones that are on the radar. I just love warmth. And yeah, it's going to be fun to hug a new baby because that stage is very much over for me, but I'm not afraid to lovingly kidnap other people's children. And it's not fun. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
That's some good travel. All right. Okay. Well, I think that'll wrap us up for now, but thank you so much for joining us. This has been really fun.
Thanks, ladies. A great conversation and thanks for the break.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to check out our next podcast coming live next week on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, you can find us and more wonderful stories like these on DesignDash.com. And make sure to follow us at Design Dasher on Instagram and TikTok. Till next time.